Let's speak now to the Minister in the Presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, who joins us live now. Thank you so much, Minister, for your time. Of course, I'm sure you were listening to some of what came out of there. I'll begin with what you said last week, because you said, let's not claim any easy victories. But the EFF is saying that credit must go to them, that there's no load shedding this afternoon.
I think it's very interesting that Julius can be very predictable. We told you last week that there's a long weekend and people have taken holidays and leave, and therefore the schools are closed. So therefore there cannot be an easy victory on that one. It's not their claim. Now he's punting excuses that buses were told not to be available and so forth. Secondly, he claims that you don't have load shedding because of their shutdown. But even in that statement, if you go back to that cabinet statement, we indicated that there was no need for these claims of a protest. It was just a disguise, because the president in July 2022 announced a 12-point energy action plan, and he said in that announcement that when implemented, this plan will alleviate the situation of load shedding in the country, because that plan focuses on maintenance of the current fleet of Eskom infrastructure, the coal power stations, to make sure that they give us the energy availability factors that are required. And Eskom then went on into a maintenance program. You recall they were indicating how many power stations they were maintaining early in the year in January. And then when they had the breakdowns, they indicated that it's because they have been maintaining a number. So the breakdowns then forced them, they could not have the electricity. And when those power stations, and Eskom also announced when those power stations are going to come back on stream to generate power. And then before the load shedding, coincidentally, they announced the numbers that they were able to get out. But if you could go back to the Eskom announcement in January, they indicated that between mid-March and early April, they will be able to have an improvement in the energy availability factor because of the maintenance work that they've done. So we know Julius. I grew up with Julius in Limpopo, and he knows that he's spinning, and that's not the fact. So, then he claims that...
I was going to go to the next point. He says government was trying to sabotage the EFF's plans by blocking the buses. They got emails at 2 o'clock in the morning. Did government try to sabotage this shutdown?
I don't know when you say government sabotages a shutdown. We told you that as government, we're not going to leave any stone unturned to make sure that the citizens of the country are protected, there's law and order. And there was no any sabotage on the part of government. We just made sure that everybody plays by the rules. If you're going to carry protesters, you should know that your transport gets caught up in blocking a road and whatever. We're going to impound those, and they'll be part of exhibits. And then you know how it goes. The court can take 12 months, and the exhibits will stay in court in the compound, the police compound, for 12 months before you use the So there was no such a thing. As government, we have to do our part to make sure South Africans are protected. We're not going to allow state resources to be used by hooligans wanting to disrupt the country. If I can tell you now, in Limpopo, where I had when you were talking about incidences, you said in Seshego the malls were closed. They were not closed. They went and barricaded the Seshego Circle mall, and they even at that instant they attack a bus carrying commuters. And that is the hooliganism that we've spoken about. Now in Northwest, they were attacking a train. They were attempting to attack a train. We've seen the bombings at Ntlalak's home. We've seen all sorts of attacks that are going on. So we will not allow that to happen as government unmitigated. We're going to mitigate whatever has to be done. And it's not true that we are teaching people about Mahlambandlovu. They were trying to attempt the Sri Lanka moment in South Africa, and it will not be allowed. And we said to you that last week that moment will not happen in South Africa. So we have a constitutional democracy.
So did you have intelligence that they wanted to do a Sri Lanka moment? They wanted to get inside and swim in the pool and go inside the house? Was that the intelligence you had?
We had information of their actions they were going to do, and we prevented those. And what I can assure you, there was no less. And President Ramaphosa was not secretive about that. He doesn't use government facilities. You know that he does not even, and the salary that he earns in government, he donates 75% of that to a charity, the Nelson Mandela charity. So I don't know what Julius is claiming. And I think as a country, we must be happy that we have a president who's not dependent on state resources for him to remain in office.
There's something you said, which of course now is could spark questions for other people, that there were conversations, of course, with bus companies that, their buses would be impounded, especially because we've seen some, as you say, in protests being used to block some of these roads. Were these the conversations that the Minister of Transport would have had with the bus companies?
No. I think what you are forgetting is that we are a government. We have a responsibility for the economy to run. We have a responsibility for the security to run. We have a responsibility to engage with business. We engage with the Consumer Goods Council, for example, to explain to them what are their plans for the route to move food across the country so that there's no food shortage in the shelves of supermarkets. And we engage with everybody. We engage with the transport sector. We were very clear. We engaged with Santaco and say what is their plan in terms of the taxi association. And they were very clear that their taxis are not going to, and the NTA, they were very clear that their taxis are not going to participate, not because they were threatened, but because they know that they're going to, with a long weekend, they're already losing a livelihood because majority of commuters will not be available. And therefore, they will not then worsen their situation to earn an income on that day. If you look today, the businesses that were severely affected by the protests of the EFF are the businesses of small businesses, workers who were already going to be struggling because majority of people have gone on the long weekend. And therefore, you cannot not engage with anybody. So the engagement with the bus companies is the same engagement we had with the transport companies, is the same engagement we had with the properties owners, the ones who own malls, is the same engagement we had with the Hawkers Association, is the same engagement we had with Santaco and everybody. And then we showed them that if whichever route they've chosen, and we never coerced anybody as government, we said to them, this is the plan in place to protect your businesses so that you can continue to operate. And if you get yourself caught in this situation, this is what it means. But we've never coerced anybody, but we're not going to leave it to chance to clear. So business themselves had to take their own options to say, what is the route they follow? It's not us who then said, you cannot do that. If they felt that they wanted to carry the EFF to the protest marches, they were free to do so. It's a democratic state.
One might argue, though, that given some of what you've just said, it didn't sound like they had much of a choice.
Look, I don't know. They have a choice. They had a choice. The meetings were very cordial. There were no threats. And in fact, when we go to the companies, the trucking associations, for example, if I want to give that example, they said, ministers, we are not going to be party of a strike because the EFF wanted the truck drivers and the trucking companies to use their trucks to block the national roads. And they said they were very clear that they're not going to be part of that nonsense and the hooliganism and creating havoc and anarchy in the country. They were very clear. They needed no persuasion from us. And then we asked them to say, when you're operating, because they're going to operate, though they indicated the impact of the long weekend. And they said, look, they already, because of the long weekend, we had our own plans and our own schedule, and they required security where they needed security to be provided, or what they deem as hotspots in terms of their routes. And we provided that, and we assured them that they will be secured, and they operated. The incidences where the buses were torched is because of the hooliganism that we predicted. Yourself, as the SABC, you have been very clear and supportive of the EFF and saying to the protests will be peaceful. And you must tell us whether it's peaceful when it passes with commuters coming from work. And then those commuters are not the so-called white monopoly capital that Julius rants about. It's ordinary mother to Boma Cindy in Seshego, Boma Muluko in Emuleji. Those are the people who are being traumatized by their buses being pelted by stones and their windscreen being shattered along the process. When they are going out, the ones that the EFF say is fighting the battle for them, how do you traumatize the very people you're fighting for them?
And Minister, just before I let you go, I know we're out of time. In about 20 seconds, we're talking about ordinary South Africans, and that was going to be my final point. There's a tweet that I saw by Noma Swazi saying that, I cannot believe, and I'm quoting her, I cannot believe that today is the safest day in South Africa in years. And she was hinting at the police visibility today. How do you respond to such as government?
The operation that we have mounted today is very expensive to mount. We took police from we cancelled it. We made sure there's visibility on the ground. But there's also a discussion. If you recall, the Secretary General of the governing party indicated that the security cluster were the weakest cluster, and we said when the Secretary General, who deploys us into Parliament for the President to appoint as ministers, says that we need to clean up our act, we have been working to make sure that we have a clean-up act. We are going to deal with the issue of crime decisively. The President has raise that issue sharply. We're going to deal with that so that South Africans can feel safe in their homes, in their streets, when they're running their businesses. And we are going to respond as a security cluster, not at the level that you have, because this is a special operations, and special operations are in their own nature very expensive. But we have harnessed the capacity and capability to make sure that we can then coordinate with all as the NATJOINTS at a NATJOINT level, which includes the military, the intelligence services, the police, and the law enforcement officers at provincial and municipal level, to say, how do we coordinate to make sure that we keep our streets and our towns safe? How do we make sure that our businesses are safe? You will see an improvement in the security situation in the country.
All right, Minister, I don't want to be accused of hogging you. I know you've got other interviews to get to, but thank you so much for that. We do appreciate it here on the show this afternoon. That was Minister in the Presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni.